So welcome to Faith and Calm. Wow, what a start. Part 51. We're coming up on a year. Wow. And Passover is coming. So I said we have to do at least 2 classes on Passover because we have to know what Passover is about. You know, if we don't know what Passover is about, it's like the story of that guy, you know, who poor man. And he goes to his wife and he says to his wife, he says, listen, can you make something other than potatoes every day, morning, noon, night? It's always potatoes, potatoes, potatoes. I don't even know what bracha to make on potatoes anymore. She says, what do you mean? The bracha on potatoes is the same. It's pori priyadama. It's on the earth. He says, that's if you're eating it. But what if it's coming out of your ears? What do you do then? So he says, I saw this magazine and I see rich people, they eat blintzes. Can you make blintzes for me? She says, sure, I'll try and make blintzes. I'll find a recipe. So she goes to some friends. She gets the recipe for blintzes. And then she comes back to her husband and she says, we have a technical problem. He says, what's the problem? He says, the blintzes call for eggs and we don't have any eggs. So he says, listen, we're not such fancy people. We can deal, if you don't have eggs, just make it without eggs. And then she comes back and she says, I have another problem. He says, we don't have any cheese. He says, okay, go ahead. Skip the cheese. Just make the blintzes. And then, the next thing comes back and, the next thing. And he says, listen, just make the blintzes. Don't, just choose what you have to do. So finally, he's all sitting at the table. He's all excited about eating the blintzes. He takes a bite out of it. There's no eggs. There's no cheese. There's no.
It's just flour and water.
Just flour and water. And he says, I don't know why these rich people get excited about blintzes. It doesn't seem very exciting to me. So the same thing with Passover. We have to prepare for Passover. If we don't prepare for Passover, we don't, do the work beforehand, then it's not the kind of holiday, the transformational holiday that we really want to have. So, you got to do the.
Shimon,
yeah.
I think the story you just told is the segue into Pesach because flour and water that they made the blintzes with they ended up making matzah.
Yeah, matzah. Yeah. So our question tonight is going to be the question of the child. So that's what the title of the class is, of everybody who got the invitation. I thought I got a great title this week. The title is Your Inner Child Has the Answers. Why? Because the highlight of the beginning of the Seder is it's about asking questions and getting answers. And the child gets up and he asks the question, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halaylot? Why is this night different than all the other nights? If you say it in Yiddish, was ist anders der Nacht von Pesach, from alle Nacht vom ganzen Jahr? Okay, so he asked this question. Then he asked 4 questions after that. And I want you, if you've ever read the Haggadah, tell me where are these questions answered? That's the typical thing that the Jewish parents do. They don't have the answer, so they start into a sermon and they say, we were slaves in Egypt. And then he starts talking about the 4 sons. And then he starts talking about the fact that, that we were, that, people tried to kill us in every generation. And he never gets to the answer. The poor kid, he doesn't have a long attention span and there's no answer. But the 4 questions are not answered. There's a lot of things in the Haggadah that are not very understandable, but this, at least they should get the kids to answer, especially when we say in Yiddish, Tate, chak, my dear, 4 kashas, give me your teretz. Tadi, I asked now 4 questions. Now give me an answer. He doesn't get an answer.
So, really, the answer is just because it's past.
Why are we leaning? He never answers why we're leaning. It doesn't answer why we're dipping. It doesn't answer these questions. Okay, if you want to get technical, he says matzah zusha ano ochlim, but we don't get the answer. He doesn't really get the answers. So this is partially based on Rabbi Ari Shishler, a little bit by Rabbi Jacobson. And he points out an interesting thing. The child actually gives the answers. He asks, why is this night different than all the other nights? And then he gives 4 things as answers. He says, listen, we're going to eat matzah, you know. The first thing he says is, all other nights we're eating hummus and matzah. That's the first question. Tonight we're only eating matzah. That's the first question. Matzah. So that's an answer. He's explaining to you. And then he says, we're going to eat more today. And then he tells you we're going to be dipping twice and we're going to be reclining. Basically, the child is giving the answers. He's telling you what's different. Why is different about this night? It's true. He does not tell you why we eat matzah, why we eat moror, but that's not his question. The question is not lama. The question is ma. What is different? What is different is we eat matzah, we eat this bitter herbs, we recline and we dip twice. That's what. That's what. So he really is giving the answer. Okay. But we have to tune in to a deeper level into the story. Because really, it's from the children that we actually learn what Passover is all about. And the child is actually teaching us what Passover is about and what we're supposed to accomplish on Passover. And these 4 questions, so to say, are actually 4 answers important at the beginning of the Seder to have in mind so that we actually accomplish what we're supposed to do on Passover. Because the first question, even before you get to these 4 questions, is, how are we going to make this night different than all other nights? There is a certain energy in the air on Passover. Every year, a certain freedom, a certain ability to change, a certain ability to leap, to do a giant leap, Pesach, jump. We pass over to leap into a new you and a new being, a new high. And that energy is available on Passover. And the problem is that as adults, we've done it once, twice, 3, 20, 25, 50 times, and it starts to get mechanical. And the child gives us the lesson on how to approach life in a new way and to really untap the inner child. So on Passover, the message is you have to find your child inside of yourself. And the child is telling you how to do that. And that's what the 4 questions are about. The matzah, the moror, the bitter herbs, and the chorosis. This is all the bitter herbs and the leaning. These are all lessons in how we actually untap a whole new you, a whole new being, a whole new level of existence. Passover, we have to be able to get to that whole new level. And that's what we mean, non-nishtanat. How do we change? How do we make this whole night a different night, a new energy, new opportunities? Because opportunities come and we just don't take advantage of them. And Passover is an opportunity to really to open yourself up to a whole new level. So the first level is the matzah. What's different about matzah and hummus? So they're not too much different. I was going to get, if I had the time before the class, I was going to bring up the 2 words, matzah and hummus. They're actually the same letters. They've got a mem and a tzaddik in it. The only difference is one of them has a hey and one of them has a chaf. You know what the difference is between a hey and a chaf, right? So in a hey, you've got this wall and a roof and another leg there. And in a ches, it goes like this. It connects up to the top. That's not a lot of difference. The letters look almost exactly the same. There's just this little bit of gap here above. And that's also true about the difference between chametz and matzah. Matzah is flour and water, and chametz is flour and water. The only difference is that if you leave it more than 18 minutes, it becomes chametz. And if you get it baked before 18 minutes, it's matzah. So,
Shimon,
yeah.
can I just ask you, is it the same root, chametz and matzah? Is it come from the same
No, it's
root?
different orders and letters, but it's...
But is it the same root? Oh, it's not exactly
no, different
the
order
same
and
root.
letters, but Capella says that even if they have the same letters, there's a deep connection between the 2, and we'll explain that. But just understand that it's very easy for matzah to become chametz. That's why people go crazy about these things, you know, right? They have all these restrictions about on Passover. And I'll tell you, the thing that we should be most worried about is the matzah, because Kitnias, beans, is not chametz. It just happened that they grow next to each other in Ashkenazi countries, and they were worried that the wheat and the beans would get mixed up, and so we don't do the corn, and we don't. But corn can't become chametz, and rice can't become chametz, and beans can't become chametz, and fruit and vegetables certainly can't become chametz. The thing that we eat on Passover that has the biggest danger of becoming chametz is matzah. If the rabbis had their way, they'd probably ban it, because if you don't do it right, it starts becoming chametz. In fact, I looked it up. It used to be, maybe a couple hundred years ago, the matzah used to be a little different than ours. It was a little thicker and it was soft. They put a lot of water in it and they made it soft. And you can imagine in the time of the temple, what you would have for matzah is you would have this sandwich, which was a soft wrap. And then inside you put some endives and some lamb chops. And what do you have? A laffa. We have to have the temple again because the matzah we have, they were so worried about the fact that, that soft dough, maybe it doesn't get cooked properly, 100% cooked. So we got to make it thinner and we got to make it harder. And now we got the matzah we have today, which is cooked in about 2 minutes. I've been in the factory. They don't wait at all. They roll it out, they flatten it, they put it in the oven, and it's fried into something hard. But hey, I would, I think we would all like matzah a lot better if it was like a laffa, make that sandwich with the paschal lamb inside of it.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, so matzah easily becomes chametz, but the letters I'm saying also indicate that. And what is the letters meaning there? So if you look at the ches, you see that it's got an opening to the bottom, right? And so does the hay. So they're both open on the bottom and they're closed, got a closed roof and a side and then a wall on the other side. What does this mean? What is the child telling us? The child is telling us that oftentimes in life we fall down, we slip, we make mistakes. We're not perfect. God didn't want us to be perfect. He wanted us to fall down. He wanted to see, he gets excitement out of seeing human beings. The soul was perfect before it came up, and then it was given all these challenges by coming into this world. And we have a lot of challenges, and many times we make mistakes and we fall and we pick ourselves back up and we try and get up again. The only difference is that if we are chametz, if we have an inflated ego, if we have we're too concerned about ourselves, we have no opening to the top. In other words, we think it's all about me and I have to do it. And if I admit that I'm a fool and I did something wrong, then somehow, when you have a lot of ego, you can't admit that you're wrong. You just constantly are covering up. You're constantly blaming somebody else. You're not able to open yourself up. The hay has an opening to the side because there's a way to get back in again from the top. So it means that you don't have an inflated ego. And that's the difference between chametz and matzah. Chametz is inflated, it's ego, it's blown up. And a person who is egotistical and is full of themselves cannot really grow. Children know this internally. 917, children 6, 9, have an innate, 8, 9, they live this. This is their life. They're always falling. They're always failing. And therefore, they don't have the problem of adults who are always trying to defend themselves and prove that they're not making a mistake. Like the story of the guy once who said, I never make mistakes. And his wife said, really? And he says, well, yeah, actually, one time in my life, I did make a mistake. 20 years ago, I made a mistake. She says, yeah, what was the mistake? He said, I thought I made a mistake. So this is some people, they're always trying to, my mistake was I thought that I made a mistake. I really didn't make a mistake. So, some people just can't admit that they make mistakes. Just look at our politicians, a lot of ego there. And they can't admit to make mistakes. It just doesn't come out and I messed up, I dissembled or something like that. They can't say it, because when it's all about you, ego, bloated up, matzah, chametz, you can't. So you know what? First step is get rid of the ego. Admit that you can make mistakes, and you're actually bigger than the person who has the big ego, because the person who's rooted above who has an opening to God, who knows that they have an innate worth in God's eyes, no matter where they are, they're a part of God, they can admit that they have mistakes. And that's really a big person. The big person is the one who doesn't think that he necessarily is perfect, is the one that that realizes that most of my actions I don't control, and some of the training I didn't have and so forth. And you know what? God gave me these traits and gave me these capabilities, and some things I'm good at and some things I'm not. And that humility is not a dish rag or a doormat kind of humility. It's a humility coming from a very big place and a deep place. So the first lesson of Pesach, the first lesson for the child is the humility. The second lesson is about more bitterness. What does bitterness have to do with growth and about transforming oneself? So sometimes when something's very bad happened to us, we turn off all our emotions. We go down into the basement, we shut off the main water faucet, and so that we don't feel good or feel bad. We try and turn off all those emotions, because the emotion that was bad was so terrible that therefore we decide I'm not going to have emotions at all. And that's a big mistake. More is giving yourself permission to feel bad about things that happen in life that truly are bad. It's okay to really experience it, to dig in and feel sadness for sometimes when the things are really awful, to really feel it. The Holocaust survivors, I saw a Machzor that came from another Holocaust survivor, and it was, in there it said that at a certain point in the Rosh Hashanah davening, you're supposed to cry. And Rabbi Jacobson was looking at this Machzor and he said, I don't understand. Why does it tell you to cry? Either you feel like crying or you don't feel like crying. So Rabbi Jonathan Sachs said, you don't understand. He says, people from Europe, people who went through all of those terrible things, pogroms and Holocaust and everything else, they didn't have to, they could cry any moment they wanted to. What they had to do was be told, you know what, and most of the time they would hold in all their emotion. I don't know if you come from a European family, but I do, my wife does, and so forth. And in general, they did not open up to the experience because they don't want to relive those experiences. They were so horrible. So they didn't share it with their children, and they didn't tell us about these things and so forth. Because if they were scared that if they opened up and they felt these things again, they would never be able to stop crying. So the Machzor had to tell them, you know what, now you can go and you can cry. And that's the same thing with the Morer. The Jews who came out of Egypt, they had to eat some more to remember how bitter it was in Egypt. They went through Egypt. They knew what bitterness was. But it's giving yourself permission to actually feel it, because oftentimes when it's such a terrible trauma, you just sort of push it out of your life. And unfortunately, when you push it entirely out of your life and deny it, and you cut off part of your life, it also kills and makes a part of you also dead. So there's the famous story. I haven't told it, but it's a great story. I heard it from Label Estrin in Pittsburgh. And Label Estrin grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. And he said he knew one of the old-time chazanim who lived in Providence. And this guy was once, in 1920s, was driving his Ford Model T, and he was in a terrible car accident. And he was thrown from the car, and he was in a coma. And the police came, and they don't have the technique that they have today. And when they found him, they assumed that he was dead. They put him on a stretcher, and they sent him to the hospital morgue. Now, he was sort of lucky because there wasn't room in the morgue when he arrived. So they put him on a stretcher and they had him sitting outside waiting for room in the refrigerated morgue for him to be put in. After a few hours, one of the orderlies comes, picks up the stretcher and starts wheeling him into the morgue. And in the middle of this process, while he was being wheeled in, he wakes up and he sees himself, covered in white, white sheet, no clothes, nothing underneath. And he's being wheeled. And he sees this big, as he said, a big African brother. And this guy is a huge guy and he's wheeling the cart. And he looks up at this guy and he goes, I'm cold. I'm cold. And the big African brother says, you ain't cold, you dead. He said he learned a lesson from this. The difference between coldness and death is very small. As Mark Twain used to say, and I've heard it, maybe probably said it before, he says, before I die, I want to move to Manchester, England, because the transition from Manchester to death is not going to be so violent. Nothing happens. So when nothing happens, when you don't feel anything, when you turn off all the emotions, that's the first problem. That's the problem. So children are always full of emotion. They cry, the emotions are on their surface. So you have to let the inner child go in, open up. And
What happened to the man on the stretcher?
He woke up and he lived through it. He told the story.
Oh, I thought the guy thought he was still dead and just
well, you know, I can sort of imagine this guy. You know,
He just sat up and walked
he
by.
didn't miss a beat. He said, "You ain't gold, you dead." I think that was a great story.
Yeah. As long as he didn't put him in the morgue. Okay.
So the first lesson is about the child. Childs are open to everything. They're always open. You know, you can tell them everything. They will remember everything. They're like the sponge. They're like the matzah. They're not. You know, us adults, we're closed. Because if I start saying things that you don't agree with me, then you shut everything out. Because you go to a lecture, you don't agree with the speaker, everything goes in. But an adult tells a child, it all goes in. They accept everything you say. That's the difference with child. They're open. They're not closed on the top, and they let things come in. The second one is you got to feel the emotion. The third, I really like. The third question the child asks is, he says, why do we dip twice? Why do we dip twice? What is dipping? Dipping is like mikveh, total immersion. Children are naturally totally immersed in the situation. Adults are always thinking about what's going to be tomorrow, what happened yesterday. You know, we're planning, we're not present in the situation. The happiness and liberation happen when you can live in the current moment, because you can really only affect the current moment. You're not in control of tomorrow. It says in the Haggadah, it says, in the beginning, our forefathers were idol worshipers, and now we're free. One of the rabbis, the Slonim Rebbe, says an interesting explanation on this. He says, if you're always living in the past, mitachila, in the beginning, then you're worshiping idols. And now you can be free, because if you live in the now, you are free, because that's what you have control over. You don't have control of what's going to happen tomorrow. God's in control. You know, people try and say, you know, the biggest wake-up lesson that you have from matzah and from hummus is that I'm not in control. You know, people try and be in control. There are people like Jim Fix who try to do everything to protect his health. And there's other people. What was the guy, the macrobiotic guy? What was his name? Kushi. Yeah. You know, people in perfect health, we don't have control over this. The biggest hummus that we have in our life.
Jim Fix died of a heart attack.
Heart attack?
And Monsieur
Kushi died of cancer.
His wife and daughter.
Daughter died of Kushi. Yeah, I mean, we don't have control. So the biggest liberation, the biggest freedom is to realize, you know what? We're not in control. There's somebody else in control. God is in control. We do everything we can. Of course, we do everything to protect our health and to take care of ourselves, but we have to let go. And we only can control really what's today, what's now. Now is the choice of what I have. I really can't control what's going to happen tomorrow, and I don't know whether what could happen in terms of finance or health or anything else. But I can control today. So today is what I can do. So you can serve Hashem today. Let me tell you a cute story that really explains the difference between adults and how they look at the world and how children look at the world. I mean, adults are all busy all the time, right? They're always planning and running and going somewhere else. And children, if they happen to see something lying on the ground, they're immediately, you know, the parent wants to go to the wedding. We're 2 hours late. And the kid sees something cute on the ground and picks it up and is into it because he lives in the present and he's just entirely into what's going on right then and there. So the story goes as follows. It was like 10 years ago or something like that. Joshua Bell, who was one of the most famous violinists in our current generation, a Jewish guy, was playing a concert at the Kennedy Center in Washington. And the Washington Post thought that this would be a good test to see, test out something. They decided to hire him. He probably makes about 50,000 to 100,000 a night. They hired him for an hour in the morning to go to the morning, put on beggar clothes, put on a beggar cap, take his Stradivarius and go play the violin like the concert he gave the night before in the Washington subway. So he comes like 8 o'clock in the morning to the Washington subway. They videotaped the whole situation and they watched all these people rushing by, the lawyers, the politicians, the students and everybody else going through the subway. And Joshua Bell is sitting there with a box in front of him and he's playing his Stradivarius, the same concert that he gave the night before that you had to pay $2,000 a seat for. And they noticed a very interesting thing. Nobody paid attention to Jonathan Bell. They were all rushing to go to wherever they had to go. The only people who would actually try and stop were the kids. And the parents would grab them and come on, come on, come on. But the kids were open to the situation. They could tell that there was something very special for how he's playing. And it teaches you a very interesting thing about marketing and about framing and so forth like that. People do not really know what art is, and they don't know what leaders are and what, and everything else. Everything is a meme, and what the newspapers say and what they think is important, that's what everybody starts saying is that's what's important and that's what's good. But you know what? We're not present in what he is. We're just listening to the framing and the packaging of all of these things. So if he's in a nice package, people recognize it. And if he's not, nobody actually noticed the person. So lesson number 3 is live in the present. Live in the present. That's going to help you get free. That's going to help you change your life. That's going to help you, and if ever you're worried about the future and this and that and what's going to be and so forth, you know what? One of the best cures are to really set yourself free and to become something new is to live in the present. And the last one is leaning. What happens when you lean, lay down, you stretch out. So that's what kids are also very good at doing. Kids, if you watch them, they're fearless. They'll jump off a 2-story building. They'll be bruised, and before the internet and everything was locked down, they would be they're jumping off of slides and climbing trees and everything else because they're not afraid to stretch to see how big they are. As we become adults, we say, this is who I am, and this is how I'm stuck, and this is who I am, and I'm not open to freedom. Freedom is realizing that you have an infinite part inside of yourself, and you can become anything you need to become. So Pesach is a time for doing this giant leap, for changing and transforming yourself, transforming myself. Every religious person has to realize they need a Pesach too, because they're probably the most stuck. They think they've already mastered everything. They know all these, they can say the Haggadah forward and backwards. They've heard it 15 times and they're stuck. They can't get free. They can't get free because they think this is what Judaism is, and they're not open to a completely new level of what Judaism is about. Passover is about turn off, listen to God for a change, and don't listen to what you think is your capabilities of how many mitzvahs you can do, what mitzvahs you can do, and so forth. I'm completely open to something new. It's not easy. Freedom is not easy, but stretching, and that's what Passover is about. We stretch and we go and we leap into something to a whole new level. So I know my wife has a PTA meeting, and next week I'll talk about the
I'm going to talk here first.
right, you're going to talk here first,
Okay.
but that's why I wanted to sign off at this point. But next week we'll continue with the 4 sons and what that teaches us about Passover. But hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview of what Passover is and how you can actually have a life-changing and transformative Passover. And I wish you all a Passover that really lets you free. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasher Koach.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Sari. Hi, Emily. Hi, Molly. Hi,
Hi.
Amy, and hi,
Hi,
whoever else
Shalama.
is on there. So first of all, I want to apologize for not even sending out one notice about this class. I was just, I sort of knew today was going to be challenging, but I didn't realize how challenging because my school scheduled parent-teacher conferences for today, and I told them I can't do it on a Monday, and there was really no choice about it. So so they allowed me to take off this window of time, but solidly before here, I was on parent teacher, and after I get off, I'm going to, and so I forgot about sending out the email. I forgot about dinner. I forgot about everything, but I was living in the moment. Hashem gave me the most magnificent dinner. Haskell was yelling at me. I'm on parent teacher conferences. It's like 6:45. He said, what, you're going to miss, he didn't care for himself. He cares for me. He said, you're going to miss dinner. That's not good for you. And so I just pulled a few things out of the refrigerator. It was magnificent. It was amazing. Hashem takes care of, like if you live in the moment, I guess Hashem takes care of you. Live in the moment and don't worry about it. So,
What was this magnificent dinner?
So a long time ago, I heard that you're going to laugh, but I heard that, liver is actually very good for you. And not that I ever make it, we can even buy it in Boston. I don't know that you can buy kosher Lubavitch liver and Lubavitch shechita liver. So I think I bought it once in New York, and I ground it up, and I put, I don't know, olive oil, probably not. I'm sure I didn't do schmaltz, and onions and that kind of stuff. And then I froze it because we didn't have any time to eat it. I froze it, and so we're already doing our kitchen, and so we're already cleaning our kitchen for Passover. So so I like yesterday I was scrounging around in the freezer for things that we could possibly eat in a hurry. I thought, interesting. Okay, I don't even know if it's good. I put it in the refrigerator, and I had chopped liver, corn chips. It was great together. A little mayonnaise. It was fantastic. Carrots, lettuce, and I can't remember something else. It was really good. It was awesome. So anyway, and it went down in 5 minutes. So
Good.
anyway, so okay, so let's begin where we normally begin, which is to say that that we have an extraordinary opportunity ahead of us. We're in an extraordinary time, and we know that the Lubavitch Rebbe said that in 1992 that the Geula is unfolding, and we know that that this man never made a public prophecy that didn't come true, and made the most astounding public prophecies and that were impossible for anybody to know, and they came true. So and we know that we have all the tools that we need. We have our guidebook, the Torah, and we have special leaders like Moshe in the past and Lubavitch Rebbe in the present, and we have mitzvahs, which are our equipment. That's how we go forward. That's how we change the world. And we know that we ourselves are here in this lifetime because Hashem wants us to be active players in this particular scenario. So I usually start out with a little review of last week, but I'm going to incorporate last week into this week. And I was thinking, what the world needs now. What does the world need now? What would you say the world needs now? Anybody? What are your opinions? What would you say the world needs now?
Love, sweet love.
Yeah, love, sweet love. Anybody else have any suggestions?
I want to say memory. We need to be able to bring in our memories for how we sort of move forward in these next chapters of our life. We have to sort of take our hard-won lessons forward and not be dazzled. Like when I think about this world of being about to break wide open, I feel like we can't be dazzled by that. We have to take the hard-won lessons and somehow interweave them into what our new consciousness is going to be. So I don't know if memory is the right word, but maybe the integration of knowledge and experience to the new future. I don't know what you're looking for, but that's what I think the world needs in quick and massive order, is to not lose sight of everything we have learned.
I agree. Anybody else? I agree. It's also very helpful in our personal life. every Saturday night I read over, I have a document, maybe somebody can help me with it. Maybe somebody here is visually oriented or I don't know if you'll get to be able to see it. I have a document that I wrote. It's all handwritten. It's like 17 pages now. And it's, I call it, there was a book, Who Moved My Cheese? You know
Yes,
that
I
book?
read that,
So,
yeah.
Who Moved My Cheese. I was very inspired after that book. And I started writing, what's old cheese in your life, Shalom Yehudis, and what would new cheese be? To those who had never read the book, old cheese, the basis of the book is that there are these creatures, there were creatures, right? There are these creatures, and then there's human beings. I forgot who, there are 4 characters in the book. And it was so long ago that I don't even remember, but I think 2 of them were maybe human, I don't remember, and 2 of them were some kind of animals or something, I don't remember. But the human being, so there's a storage, somehow there's a place of cheese, and they're really cheese fiends, and they're so happy, all of them. And but then they notice that something's changing, and one day the cheese is not there, and so they don't know what to do. Their supply of cheese is gone, and I don't remember what they were, animals or whatever. I don't remember what they were. After a while, they get used to the fact there's no cheese here, and they move on and they find new sources of cheese. But the people can't move on. They insist, but the cheese must be here somewhere. It always was here. It's got to be here. And it's very hard for them to move on. So the whole thing is the whole message of the book is sometimes we cling to behaviors that we think must yield the outcome that we want, but we don't notice this doesn't yield the outcome I'm looking for. Maybe it did once in my lifetime or a few times, but it's not working for me anymore. So I came up with 17 pages of things that are not working for me anymore and what would work for me. And I think it's one of the most valuable things I ever wrote. And, I'm, slowly compiling a book of essays. And I would like this to be the, like the whatever you call it, the crown essay, the one that I would start it off with. But I don't know how to put like icons and stuff like that for old cheese and new cheese and how to lay it out in a nice way. So I don't even know how to, I'll have to figure it out if anybody has any ideas. So, oh my gosh, how did I get there? How did I get to old cheese, new cheese? What was I just speaking about before?
You
Old
said,
cheese.
what does the world need?
Yeah, what is the
And
word?
that's how you got to that. And
Yeah.
I just wanted
Oh,
to just,
Amy's point. It's Amy's point. Amy's point is you have to not, if you have something that's a hard won lesson, don't, the new cheese, all the new cheese things, the 17 pages of new cheese, those are things that are hard won lessons in my life. And so what do? I don't let them go. Every Saturday night, I begin my new week by reading at least 3 pages of old cheese, new cheese, because I don't want to let go of the hard won truths in my life. So anyway,
what's an example of one? Could you give us an example
maybe
of what might be?
I think I should just keep going because I have to be back onto parent teacher.
Yeah, stay on task.
in,
Yes.
in 20.
Yeah, but I don't know what you mean by that.
Oh, okay, good. Here's a silly thing. I'm just reading the first thing that comes to my head, or comes to my eyes, sorry. So, like if something went wrong with me and then it's better or it's getting better, I get impatient and I just like, I'll just, use that body part like it was never injured. And instead of, just instead of doing what's expedient, use my, how should, you're getting better. This thing is getting better. Maybe you should use your head. Is there a different way you can do this rather than the expedient way? So instead of rushing and forcing, using my head and taking precautions, you can be in a rush, but you still have to use your head. So that's just a very, not a very deep one, but it's a
It's
practical
an
one.
example. Thank you.
So, so anyway, anybody else have anything they wanted to say on what the world needs now?
Cooperation. I said the
I like that
other,
too.
but I think
Yeah.
respect and cooperation and understanding.
That's good.
I think they're all good. So what I decided was humility and unity. And the two holidays that are at this time of year are exactly that, humility and unity. So even though I think humility precedes unity, we'll talk about unity first. Unity was Purim. Purim was all about unity. And, Haman accused the Jews in the Haggadah, not the Haggadah, in the Megillah. If you read it, Haman says to Achashverosh, these people are scattered. And we learn, if you look at the commentary on the Megillah, if you see that Haman's accusations are actually accusations that are going on in heaven. That these Jewish people, they're not sticking together. They're scattered. That's not the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be helping each other. They're supposed to be doing. They're supposed to, be friendly to each other. And so what was the cure? The cure was unity. That was the cure. When we understood what Mordechai was saying, that Haman has a decree out there to kill us, and they accepted Mordechai's cure. Mordechai's cure was to do teshuvah, to ask Hashem for forgiveness, to go back to the ways of Torah and mitzvahs, and to unite. That's exactly what we did, and every single Jew did it. And for like 11 months, any single Jew could have gotten out of the death decree by simply saying, I don't want to be Jewish anymore. Hey, Haman, I'm not Jewish. I don't want to be part of this people. Not one single one did. Instead, they all did teshuvah, and they turned their hearts to Hashem, to Hashem. And if you notice, all the mitzvahs of Purim are about unity. Most of the mitzvahs of Purim, we listen to the Megillah, where we learn the lesson of humility. We send food gifts to each other, shalach manas. That's an act of unity, an act of brotherly love, sisterly love. We give tzedakah. We care about the poor among us, and so it's all about unity. Now, unity is incredible. It's really what we need right now. But I think a precedent to unity is humility. And I think that's really, it's almost like the thing that's absolutely missing from our time. I don't talk about politics, virus, and vaccine, but I will say one thing, not about those things specifically, but about why is it so impossible to speak about politics, virus, and vaccine? And why is it so divisive? And why is it, it's so crazy? So I think that one thing, first of all, it's the Yetzer Hara's playground. All three of those things are the Yetzer Hara's playground. And I think that when a person talks about those three things, no matter which side of the equation they're on, even when they're in the middle, no matter which side of the equation they're on, we have a tendency to become a little bit of a know-it-all. That's what happens, People have their information and they feel that they know something that you don't know. And if you knew what they knew, then you would believe like they do. And the fact of the matter is that these issues are so enormous that it's impossible for a casual observer or even an educated observer to have an angle on more than a little bit of it. There's always information that you don't have. But on the other hand, but for some reason, these topics make us feel like I know it all, and you're a fool if you believe that way. And so it's just a very interesting thing about those things. So what we want is the opposite of that. We want to nurture humility, and that's Pesach through and through and through. Why are we so crazy on Pesach about chametz? I'm sure you all know that the difference between chametz and matzah is that chametz gets puffy, right? It's flour and water that you've allowed to sit together in each other's company, mixed up, for more than 18 minutes. At 18 minutes, it starts fermenting. It starts getting bubbly. And what is puffy and bubbly? It's ego. It represents the rising ego. Matzah it's in the, they mix it, it's in the oven immediately and it's done. I think Heskel Shimon's 2 minutes was an exaggeration. A minute and a half is closer to the truth. And on Pesach, we go, all year round, a person should be humble. It's healthy. It's so healthy to be humble. But on Pesach, we go crazy about chametz because we want to get down. We want this humility thing to be real. For 8 days, it should be real. So we know that we're allowed to eat chametz the rest of the year. Chametz is yummy. It's delicious. And Hashem doesn't want to deprive us of it. But as Amy once said, we have an 8-day inoculation. We have an 8-day inoculation against yeast or candida, all that kind of stuff. We have an 8-day inoculation. And the 8-day inoculation is really, it's nice if it helps with all those other problems like candida, but it's really meant to introduce humility into our lives. So the entire year, we're humble. A normal person is humble, but we have okay, we have a little bit of chametz mixed in. We have a little bit of chametz all the time mixed in. So and how can you see that you have chametz? We have chametz with other people. We yell at them. We disagree with their opinions. We think we're right. We think we know it all. But we also, the other telltale sign that we have chametz mixed in, and I'll tell you one telltale sign. When something goes wrong in your life, how do you react? So if you react with complete trust in Hashem, you don't need Pesach. No, you do need Pesach because Hashem demands it of it. It's a yearly review. But if you don't trust Hashem, then you've got chametz mixed in. That's chametz. Chametz is not only with another human being. Humility is not only with another human being, it's with Hashem. It's knowing that Hashem is the one who loves us not only more than our mother and father, but more than we love ourselves, infinitely more than we love ourselves, and that he doesn't let anything happen to us that is not the most astoundingly good thing we can possibly imagine. Okay, so what is the remedy for chametz? The remedy for chametz is given to us, just a second, the remedy for chametz is given to us from Hashem. Stay away from it for 8 days. And not only stay away from it for 8 days, but do your best to clean it out of your surroundings. Remove it. Don't just not eat it. Remove it completely. Don't own it. Don't eat it. And you're not allowed to be able to see it in your premises. You're not allowed to own any of it, even a tiny bit. Not allowed to see even the tiniest thing. And you're not allowed to, of course, eat it, ingest it. So, and not only we're supposed to be so far removed from chametz, we're not supposed to have even a hint. That's why we change our dishes. We change our kosher dishes for new dishes because you're not even supposed to expose yourself to the tiniest hint. So, okay, so let's there's one more point that I wanted to make before I go to okay.
Parent teacher.
No. I'm still with you. I have 3 minutes. Oh golly.
I know.
Here I go. Okay, good. So anyway, if you ways to show that you have the ways that we know that we have chametz is if something bad happens and we think I am the hero and Hashem is the villain. I'm the one who I'm so good. I'm so everything. And look what happens to me. That's that. He doesn't care. I care. He doesn't care. That's chametz. And then there's milder cases of chametz, which is pushing Hashem out of the picture. When you have a problem, obsessing about the problem and forgetting that this too is Hashem. So what's the remedy? The remedy for this is number one, thanking Hashem for everything. Thanking Hashem. So everybody feels that they thank Hashem. I'm sure all of us feel we thank Hashem all the time, that it's become a part and parcel of our life. But there's no comparison to like the Thank You Hashem movement. It's really helped both me and Yeheskel Shimon, both of us. The Thank You Hashem movement is not just thanking Hashem. It's not just thanking Hashem when you notice his kindness. It's making lists of all the nice things that he did for you that day. Because if you thank Hashem only when you notice something, our tendency is to forget the good within seconds after thanking and move on to the next thing. There's a thing, it says in Torah that miracles don't produce faith. Why? Because people forget miracles. Even if a miracle is astounding, human nature is that you forget the miracle and you go on to the next crisis. We know that when the Jews were at at Har Sinai and they heard Hashem's voice, 41 days later, they made a golden calf. They forgot all about it, and so just thanking Hashem when you notice something is good is not enough. Better is to make lists, either verbally every day at dinner or writing them down, because when you make a list of all the nice things that happened to you today, your trust in Hashem grows and grows and grows, because you say, whoa, look at all he did for me today. And instead of it just vanishing from your mind right after it's done. So I want to add one more point, and I'm going to, and maybe I'll elaborate on it more next week, because I'll elaborate on it more next week. And that is that one of the most astounding things that you can do is thank Hashem for the bad stuff. Thank Hashem for the bad stuff. It is an amazing tool. It helped Yeheskel Shimon this week, and it helped me this week. And I think we're going to
Can you give a quick example? What happened?
I'm going to give you an example. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. So I had a phone conversation with somebody. It was a fine sort of phone conversation, but there was a little bit of politics, the other stuff, but it was sort of a fine conversation. It wasn't a terrible conversation, but still when I hung up, it was unsettling. And I went to my next activity and I wasn't my usual self. I know my usual self, and I wasn't my usual self. And it persisted for a while. I was thinking, I don't like this. I want to be myself again. Well, and so all of a sudden it dawned on me, and I said, thank you, Hashem, for this dip in my mood, because I know even this is from you. Everything is from you. Thank you, Hashem. I don't know how it's good, but thank you. And I have to tell you, a few minutes later, Yeheskel Shimon came. This is my office. He came into my little office, and I was my usual incredibly silly self. I have to tell you that at home, I'm a very silly person. And all of a sudden I noticed, wow, you're your silly self again. You completely forgot about that stuff. I simply thanked Hashem for the bad stuff, and it helped me let it go like crazy. I'm going to
just because he walked in?
No,
just him walking in.
No, not because he walked in. Because I didn't even notice that my mood changed immediately. As soon as I thanked Hashem for the bad stuff from the bottom of my heart, not just my mouth, but from the bottom of my heart, Hashem, this upset, this internal upset, even that is from you. Thank you, Hashem, because I know it's good for me. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I know everything you do is good for me. And I was already better, but I didn't notice it until
Oh.
Shimon came in, and all of a sudden I'm cracking jokes, saying the silliest things in the world. And I know when I do that, I know I'm in a good mood. You know, when I'm in a bad mood, I'm not silly whatsoever. And when I'm in a good mood, it's like such a barometer of my mood. Anyway, I love you all, and I'm going to see you, Emir Hashem, next week. And now I'm off. I love you all. Thank
Okay.
you so much for
Thank-
coming.
Thank you. Yes.
Bye, good night. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night.
Have
Thank
a
you.
good-
Bye.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good week.
Thank